And please note that we have interpretation, English, Spanish, and French, and cameras and mics are off for you that are joining us online. And please speak slowly. For you who are here in the room, you can scan the QR in the screen. Thank you so much. Mr. Rukundo, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you very much. I'd like to, so first of all, introduce myself. I'm Olivier Rukundo. I'm with the CBD Secretariat. I'm the head of the Peoples and Biodiversity Unit, under which we deal also with the Gender and Biodiversity portfolio. So I'm very happy to be with you here and on any day, even Sunday. So, so welcome all to this event. With regards to the idea of having this event, I think I'd like to first acknowledge that it's a joint event between the CBD and the Women's Caucus, but state out of front that to really thank our partner for pulling the weight in terms of organizing this event and making sure that you're here and that the programming and the logistics and all of the aspects related to this dialogue are taken care of. So really congratulations on pulling this together. Sometimes partners put in more weight than others. In this case, I think we have to acknowledge the wonderful work that you did, Amelia and the team. So thank you very much for that. So again, welcome to this event. This event is meant to be a dialogue about assessing where we are and what needs to be done, what has been done, what are the milestones in terms of the implementation of the Gender Plan of Action, and of course, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. We are among friends to discuss, exchange freely, and I really do hope that this dialogue will provide the opportunity for all of us to sort of gather thoughts, views, because what is impending now is to really advance the implementation of the Gender Plan of Action within the, of course, the purview of the framework, but also to hear from you as to what you have done, what you need to do, what is preventing you, what is allowing you to do things, so we can learn from each other. So I'll stop here for these remarks, and we'll have more to say with regards to what's going to be ahead in terms of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you. Yes, I will take you for where we are. I would like to ask all of you, where are we? After 17 months, after December 2022, after the Gender Plan of Action has been adopted by all the parties, after 2 SOPSTAs, we are still in the fight for recognition, in the fight for being there, not only in the papers, but being there in the implementation. And the starting points are obviously on the decisions. So we need to focus on what has happened and what has to be happening not only in the near future, in this week. What do we need for us to really start saying that parties are willing to take the gender responsiveness seriously, not only in words? So for implementation, we need the recognition of our roles as women, as Indigenous women. We need, for that recognition, I think we need our rights to be respected, not only in paper, but in facts. We need to know and to work with which rights specifically. We want land rights. Women are in the land, on the ground. We are working there. We need direct access to financial resources. Which financial resources? Why would we always need intermediaries? Something like very uncomfortable questions maybe, but we have to get the answers. So we have to work on that. The objectives, we have them in the screen. Identify the challenges, resources, an opportunity to implement the GPA, establish a collaborative roadmap for the full implementation of the GPA, the establishment of the Gender and Biodiversity Focal Points Network. As you can see in our objectives, we are always moving forward. We want the parties to move forward with us, okay? So let me introduce our distinguished panelists. Thank you. I have to my right, Yolanda Terán, who is a Quechua from Ecuador. Ms. Terán is from the Red de Mujeres Indígenas para Latinoamérica y el Caribe, y from the Biodiversity Forum for Indigenous Issues. Is that correct? International issues. Then we have Christina Egeter from WWF. And to my left, I have Benge from UN Women. Thank you for joining us. I will start with a few questions regarding what we need to happen. These are only guiding questions. Maybe they are guiding statements, more or less. We need to know about the actions and steps that have to be taken for implementation of the GPA, but specific actions, specific steps. I would like you to comment too on what would be the ideal scene, or if you know of specific experiences and challenges that have been faced for the outcomes of the GPA, and what can be done to ensure that national plans, including MBSAPs, are designed and implemented in a gender-responsive manner. Do you know of any best practice that you can share with us? Or ideally, which best practice would you recommend? Thank you. Please, Yolanda, you have the floor.
Buenos días. Soy Yolanda Terán de la Nación Quichua de Ecuador. Estoy en representación del Foro Indígena sobre Biodiversidad y también sobre la Red de Mujeres Indígenas para América Latina y el Caribe. Quiero entender, ¿respondo a las 3 preguntas o una por una?
No.
O bueno, ok. Voy a hablar en calidad de mujer indígena, en calidad de miembro de una comunidad indígena en Ecuador, para comenzar diciendo que si es que hablamos de la implementación de este plan de género, en primer lugar, lo que tenemos que hacer es una promoción, divulgar primero qué es el CBD, porque en nuestros pueblos indígenas, comunidades locales, no se conoce ni siquiera qué es biodiversidad, no conocemos qué es el convenio de la biodiversidad. Entonces, mi reflexión es esta, que deberíamos promover el contenido del CBD. Luego tenemos que conocer el contenido del nuevo marco de biodiversidad, Kunming-Montreal, que tiene conocer su estructura, sus metas, sus objetivos y cuáles son esas metas que lógicamente nos corresponde a las mujeres. En este caso, por ejemplo, yo he estado pensando mucho en la meta 7 que habla de alimentación. Tal vez por la prisa con la que trabajamos, no le pusimos la atención debida, pero considerando las situaciones actuales, pienso que debemos poner mayor atención inclusive al concepto de seguridad alimentaria, soberanía alimentaria y sistemas de alimentación indígenas, que son, digamos, conceptos que debemos manejarlos de manera unida. Además, poner atención en las metas 22 y 23 y ayudar a nuestra gente, cuando demos las capacitaciones, a entender qué significa exactamente una participación plena y efectiva. Participación es solamente que nos inviten a estar sentados allí, nos tomen la foto y digan que hemos estado allí. No. Participación es que nos dejen hablar, que nos escuchen nuestros pensamientos, nuestras voces y nuestras perspectivas. Y también que nos tomen en cuenta en los procesos de decisión. Es complicado porque todavía, inclusive como pueblos indígenas, estamos invisibles o seguimos invisibles y siempre tenemos que estar como alzando la voz, la mano para que nos tomen en cuenta. Después de conocer entonces el CBD, el nuevo marco, ahora sí, lo que tenemos que hacer es ya promover el plan, porque todo va unido. Entonces, cuando ya las personas conozcan este plan, van a entender por qué estamos hablando de un plan de género. También tomar en cuenta que dentro de nuestros pueblos y comunidades nosotros no tenemos la palabra género. Nosotros hablamos de roles sociales de los hombres y de las mujeres. También resaltar esta relación intrínseca que tenemos los pueblos indígenas y comunidades locales con la madre tierra, con sus ecosistemas y considerar que ella está viva y es sagrada para nosotros. Y más que todo, entender y reconocer que los pueblos indígenas tenemos derechos colectivos. Entonces, lo que quisiera sugerir es que cualquier capacitación en cualquier tema debe ser elaborada de acuerdo a las necesidades locales y a las prioridades de los pueblos indígenas, comunidades locales, mujeres y jóvenes. Lógicamente, utilizando instrumentos culturalmente apropiados, utilizando lenguas indígenas y con el soporte técnico y financiero correspondiente. En lo que se refiere a los desafíos, ¿no? Vuelvo a repetir, yo hice una capacitación en Ecuador con gente universitaria y gente de comunidades, las puse juntos. Ninguno de los dos grupos conoce ni siquiera qué es el CBD. Entonces he tenido que ir desde el principio. Si hablamos de los MBSAPs, peor. Ni siquiera sabían qué es un MBSAP. Con la capacitación logramos entender a qué ministerio, a qué autoridad deben acudir, pero todavía hay exclusión, hay racismo, no hay esa voluntad política de incluirnos. Entonces, y a esto se suma el conflicto político que hay entre pueblos indígenas y los gobiernos de turno. Para concluir, yo lo que quisiera recomendar es que la implementación de este plan de género necesita tomar en cuenta la decisión 39 de la CEDAW, que se trata de los derechos de las mujeres y jóvenes indígenas, el convenio de Belén do Pará y también tomar en cuenta el reporte sobre mujeres indígenas que lo realizó Francisco Calí, que es el relator especial de los pueblos indígenas. Con eso termino. Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Thank you very much, Yolanda. It was very interesting what you have opened for us to discuss further later on. Everything is related, everything is connected. So women food systems, women in situ conservation, women genetic resources, etc. We can open so many fields there, and the connecting line are women. Thank you so much. Please, Christina, you have the floor.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, and good morning. At least in Nairobi is a beautiful, I would say, glorious day. Thank you. And I think there are many points that Yolanda covered that I might repeat a little bit. Now, not because because they are important and they are key and core to the gender plan of action. So all I want to do is remind us around outcome 2. And I'll read it because it's important to understand and pay attention to all the concepts and the ideas. Biodiversity policy, planning, programming decisions address equally the perspectives, interests, needs, and human rights of all people, in particular of all women and girls. So it's about participation, but it's about participation not just in workshops, not just in trainings, but really being part of the space that makes decision and the decision makers, the plan actions that might impact women, might benefit women, but for sure we need to avoid that they have negative impacts on their rights and needs and their livelihoods. There are three objectives, all about participation, effective and meaningful participation. But we know, as Yolanda clearly and beautifully put, it's not just about being present, it's not just being counted as numbers, quotas, but is being able to participate adequately and meaningfully in discussions, having the knowledge, the information in appropriate language, in appropriate, culturally appropriate ways to be able to participate and know, basically know about something that is happening. There being one of the objectives is also to have more participation and engagement of women and girls in the development of MBSAPs and the implementation of the GPF. But we saw and we found out through a survey that civil society organization took not too long ago, and that we will present back the results next week, is that participation of women is the weakest in the MBSAPs because there is no outreach to women organizations and networks, especially at grassroots level. And compared to other social groups, definitely women are the least engaged in MBSAPs development across. I think this is something that can be of course, acted upon, and there are measures that can be taken in terms of guidance provided, information sharing, capacity building, but also having meetings and consultation at subnational level, at local level, reaching out. On the other hand, more information available to women about what is going on, where they can intervene, engage, and contribute. It's very important that they also reach out and be active, proactive in reaching out to their local governments, to the decision makers, and make their voices heard. There was a good excellent reference to food sovereignty that Yolanda mentioned and food system. It's also important to recognize in grassroots initiatives, and we see at no matter what the conditions are, the women are often pioneers. They take the actions, they make things happen. And so we see across the world, especially in the global South, thousands of initiatives, small-scale enterprises to promote their livelihoods and the well-being of their families and communities. And all of these things are excellent contributions to the achievement of the global biodiversity framework. There would be no successful by 2030 achievement without involvement of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Yes, being part of, we have always been part of, but we don't have the acknowledgement when decisions are taken, no? And I will reuse something you said, and Yolanda too, and it's capacity building. And I would like to include there the knowledge exchange, because it's not only capacity building, it's the knowledge exchange we are so good at, and we have yet to conquer this step on knowledge exchange. Thank you again. And now, Benge, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, and good morning. And if you're connecting in a different time zone, good afternoon, good evening. I just want to add a few points to what has already been excellently shared this morning, but really trying to shift a little bit in terms of how I want to communicate my perspective and the perspective of from the work of UN Women in this space. First, by looking at the the Gender Plan of Action as a global instrument that has to be contextualized within the national space through the NBSAPs. And secondly, to really present the transformational nature of society, economies, and how that can help us come up with NBSAPs that are really strong to deliver and uphold the rights of women and girls within national contexts. So the to go back to this framing of the Gender Plan of Action being an international guide that needs to be domesticated. By the way, I'm responding to outcome 3, which is on enabling conditions that are created to ensure gender responsive implementation, which is why I'm going to mention the NBSAPs quite a bit in my presentation. But we know already that we need to create the capacities on the ground. And this is something that our implementation of NBSAPs needs to respond to. The Gender Plan of Action is supposed to enable the NBSAPs to look at how capacities can actually be built so that biodiversity action coupled together with general environmental action can be gender responsive. The issue of measurement is another very important one that we always want to make sure we can develop. And this has got to also be integrated in our national biodiversity plans and strategies by ensuring that when we're collecting data and statistics, we are also collecting at the same time gender data, sex disaggregated data, and creation of gender statistics that are actually going to help us measure how we're making progress on upholding the rights of women and girls within national and local context. But one thing I also want to emphasize here is when we're talking about measurement, we usually have in our minds national statistics mechanisms that are led by national statistics bureaus. We also need to really recognize that we are working at the grassroots level. We're working within local communities. And so we need to also consider how we can utilize citizen-generated data that, because our local communities are the ones that actually know and actually count the change that is actually happening on the ground. And so we need to make sure that we have a way of ensuring that the NBSAPs can harness this local knowledge to transform it into measurement that is going to tell the story of progress. Technology is another enabler that we need to look at, and I don't think I need to spend more time explaining why this is of crucial importance, but the NBSAPs need to allow for technology exchange and ensuring that we have the systems and tools to ensure that our NBSAPs are being implemented in a gender responsive fashion. But one of the biggest items that we normally look at when it comes to successful conditions for implementation is money. And here, resource mobilization is always a challenge. Countries have, by themselves, are working towards creating budgets that are going to enable the implementation of NBSAPs. At the same time, while they're collecting or rather mobilizing local resources, they are also in the international space collecting or rather mobilizing from overseas development assistance and concessional loans and others to help with environmental work. But the one thing that we have seen is this growing interest in using multilateral funds. One thing we wanted to share here is multilateral funds are only 3% of environmental funding that is available out there. 40% of environmental funding is actually coming from bilateral sources. So when we're working with our governments and in trying to support the resource mobilization that needs to come, we need to consider that we need to lend a lot of our efforts to where we have the biggest chance of accessing resources, while of course not forgetting that multilateral funding mechanisms are also there to help mobilize resources. This comes with the securing of appropriate partnerships, but also the power of organizing on the ground that then allows for resources that come in to go far in implementation. I think NBSAPs and the Gender Plan of Action need to work together, not just for the realization of rights, but really need to pick out the redress and challenging of discriminatory social norms that are always at play, even when we have the most beautiful documents that speak to the achievement and realization of gender equality, but they need to create this space where women can really succeed when they're being engaged in the process. So these are some of the points that I basically wanted to start with. And in terms of challenges, I think one, there's never going to be enough resources available. And we need to recognize this and start coming up with more innovative ways of how we can actually make change happen. Data and information, they're just not organized in a way. They are available, but not really organized in a way that enable us to tell the story that we want to tell about measurement and progress. And then the civic space that we want to work in is usually siloed we're going to talk about the technical aspects of biodiversity action away from where the gender story is actually being told, where the indigenous story is actually being told. So we need to make sure that we continue working hard to bring this together because they are part of the same story, whether it's within a scientific context or not. What can we actually do? I think we need to enable the NBSAPs to use the Gender Plan of Action to break power structures. And I think that is fundamental because all the work that we're doing is really to challenge the underlying systemic issues that, that disadvantage women and girls especially, and marginalized communities in taking positions of decision-making and authority. We need to focus on how interventions will benefit women in their own right, enabling their choice and self-determination, but also look at taking a whole of government approach when we're implementing the our NBSAPs by making sure that it's not just the ministries of environment that are involved. There's the ministries of finance, there are ministries of gender and economic planning that need to be part of the common planning mechanism. We also need to, and that's for us, especially coming from UN Women, we need to do a better job at socializing the outcomes of the Commission on the Status of Women's 66th session, which looked at environmental action, and make sure that we contribute the recommendations coming out of that for biodiversity action to fulfill its obligations to women and girls, young people, indigenous communities in all their diversity. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Venga. Yes. Before I open the floor for some questions, I would like to point out that this enabling that the gender plan of action has is the most powerful tool that there is in everything that we come here and talk and speak about. We need the enabling conditions, but also the wish to enable the decision, the political decision for supporting, enabling. No, yes, money is never enough, but we can look for many other ways to do it. And yes, information is the first thing, but it's not the only thing. Once we have the information, we need to do something about it. We have always done that as women, no? I want to underline and highlight this part of talking between different ministries. This is very important. As I am Mexican, I recall the CBD COP in Mexico and the introduction of the mainstreaming agenda. And this is an idea that originally came from women too. I don't know if you know, but and that agenda came from women too. So this mainstreaming is in all over the place, and we are all over the place, and we want to be heard, and we have the enabled conditions to be heard with the GPA. Thank you very much to the distinguished panelists. I will take questions from the room, and if we can take from the online.
So the question is, what is the roadmap to COP16?
Any of our our panelists would like to answer? Also, we have a dialogue here, so we can, whomever wants to answer or to present an idea of this roadmap. Thank you, Oliver.
Yes, thank you for the question, which is not a question, is a series of questions, right? Roadmap towards COP16, but it's a good perspective in the sense that what we're doing here is, of course, embedded in what's going to be discussed at COP16. We know that really the review of the gender plan of action will happen not at this COP16, but at the next COP17. But what it means for us, it's a bit of a midterm assessment of where we are in terms of the implementation of the gender plan of action. COP16 is really the first time parties and others will meet to assess progress in the implementation of the global biodiversity framework. So it's also a good opportunity for us to assess where we are with the implementation of the gender plan of action. And in particular, just going back to what the panelists were actually presenting on with regards to also the use of certain tools and instruments that are broader than just the general plan of action, such as the NBSAPs. It was reiterated that the NBSAPs are the vehicle for implementation, and then the mainstreaming of gender consideration in NBSAPs is key. At COP16, there will be discussion, of course, on the monitoring framework of the global biodiversity framework. So issues of genders will also have to be sort of considered in that part of the package, and a whole other host of issues where gender is actually featured in decisions and in considerations for the implementation of the overall framework. So I think COP16 provide a good midpoint review sort of milestone for us, but I think we have to think about it also in the way that, and I think the Women's Caucus have been advocating for this, how not only look at the gender plan of action in isolation, but look at how it is mainstreamed in other decisions that will be featured in at COP16 that will be the highlights of the discussions. I mean, just for one, Wenge was mentioning resource mobilization. This is a whole issue that's across all the thematic discussions in the CBD, and of course COP16 will have, and actually this meeting that's going to start on Monday, on the SBI will actually have a heavy workload on resource mobilization. So any opportunity is good, but I think for us will be, in terms of the gender plan of action specifically, a good midpoint review of where we are and what needs to happen next.
Thank you very much, Olivier. Thank you. Now, I will present Amelia. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Melania.
Yeah, thank you very much to the panelists for excellent presentations of ideas about how to mainstream gender in the CDB plans now and in the future. I remember when I was working in Costa Rica that we started discussing how to include a specific target for gender, and now I see how this group have achieved a lot of goals, but the fight doesn't end there, right? So we need to continue working on these gender issues. And I just would like to comment a bit about the opportunities of mainstream also gender in ABS topics and access and benefit sharing, access to genetic resources, and also access to traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources. We work on the development of the ABS the study on ABS indicators for the plan of the biodiversity plan, and we included some ideas about disaggregation by gender, right? About benefits received by women and girls. And it has a lot of challenges because parties to the CBD and also parties to the Nagoya Protocol can report about legislative and administrative measures. For example, they can report about if they ratify or not the Nagoya Protocol, about if they have ABS legislation or not, how many permits they have granted, but to ensure benefit sharing coming back. But it's a big challenge now because Goal C and Target 13 calls to increase benefits shared, right? So now parties must start working about how they can collect information about the benefits they have received in their countries through the ABS permits and agreements. So it is a big challenge for many countries because sometimes the ABS systems are not centralized. They are very decentralized among different authorities and also among different providers. So it is a big challenge, and I think they will have to work a lot developing their systems to collect this kind of information about the benefits they are receiving. There are a lot of challenges, but I think it's a challenge, but also an opportunity at this point because they have to start developing these mechanisms, right, to collect the benefits. And why not, if you're starting, have a little detail there, trying to also collect information about benefits received by women. Right. So I think there is an opportunity, and maybe if you work a bit closer with parties, you can start highlighting some examples. If some countries already have this information available, how to highlight it and maybe use this information also to mainstream, right, the gender in the ABS world, I would say. And me, Alejandro Lago, and Amber Scholz are the editors of this study. You can find the study as the info number 12. It is available in English, but also if you look in the others tab, there is a courtesy translation to French and Spanish. So there you can see which are the main ideas and the main proposals to start measuring benefits received. And then you can explore some ideas about how to mainstream gender in these topics. So those were my comments. I am leaving today, but Alejandro Lago will be around during the whole week, so you can also interact with him. And Amelia and Ada have my email address, so we are there to collaborate when you need it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, very, very much. Yes, please. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm Bupe Mwambingu, and I represent Synthetic Bio Africa. I'm a scientist by trade, and I'm involved in research and development mainly. But my presence here is as a scientific advisor to the mainly young research scientists within Africa across the continent. It's a very new forum that was created about 3 years ago now. Simply because there was a call for support to unite women as well as young people to identify, almost on a self-help approach, to identify opportunities to gain skills as well as technology. As a diaspora, a Tanzanian diaspora residing in UK, I saw this as an opportunity for me to get involved with this group. So the approach I have taken as an advisor to this forum has been to address some of the things that you've discussed today. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you before we dash off to the DSI discussions. So I'm just going to recap on some of those points because they're very important in helping us to identify ways to include the gender inclusiveness. One of those is in partnership, R&D research partnership, which I'm heavily involved in negotiating collaborative agreements for industry in the global north, in some of the African institutions. Some of them academic, some of them are government research institutions. So one of the conditions that our funders have placed based on a suggestion we made is that 50% of the research team has to be women. So when we are negotiating the ABS, the Access and Benefit Sharing Agreements, we actually impose that on the government or the ministries that we are discussing the mutual agreed terms, that the team identified that will do the work on the ground. So when we come to deliver the skills transfer and the technology transfer, we want to make sure that that team is 50% women. It allows then for me as the project coordinator overseeing this partnership to have a base to measure from, because then I get the CVs, I get the profiles of the team members, and I'm able to monitor over the course of 3 years, because all our partnerships are at least 3 years, what improvement or what capacities and capabilities have been gained. Because what I'm trying to aim through this program is that at the end of the 3 years, all the team members become trainers. So my hope is that those 3 women become another 3 women and then another 3 women, and hopefully the number increases. Because from my own personal experience, I want to share that. I was a financer who was made redundant. And at 40 years old, I went back to university and retrained as a scientist. It's taken me 15 years to gain the capacity to be recognized as an expert. For an African woman, that is not easy. I'm sure many people here will support that. So for me, it's a personal agenda to ensure I enable other women who look like me to feel comfortable to approach a peer that understands their struggle. It's very difficult for women to approach the opposite gender for support in their career or even to ask what route to take to achieve their goals and ambitions. So peer mentoring programs are needed. This is what we need to focus on in the Women Caucus, that the women that are already in the Women Caucus, whatever your skills are, you need to help pave a way for the next generation behind you. So peer programs is one. Not necessarily always is funding is what enables the environment. It's mainly the will to make things happen. If you have the will, even without money, you can make it happen. So I think we need to be creative and innovative in our approaches of how we support and enable each other. So in industry where I am, I have engaged my employer to provide internship in the summer. And I ensure again in those internship opportunities that are offered, if there are two, one goes to a male and one goes to a female. So even in our places of work, we can influence change that then ripples to that effect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We have another question here in the room, and then we are going to the online questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. A bit awkward. I'm Natasha Ali. I'm here from UNEP World Conservation Monitoring Centre or UNEP WCMC, and I've got a lot of questions and comments, but I guess I'll reflect on the ones. I'm representing my colleague Catherine Dispo Belmonte, who you might well know, and she unfortunately couldn't be here today. But I suppose I'd like to just reflect on some of the things that Olivia said in terms of the roadmap to COP16 and beyond. So you mentioned the monitoring framework. One of the things that Catherine's asked me to flag is that, and you may have seen this, those of you that have been attending Substa, there is, in the monitoring framework, there was a discussion on an indicator to monitor the implementation of the Gender Plan of Action through the GBF. UNEP WCMC has been trying to develop that indicator, and they've started a consultation on that methodology to generate that indicator. So I can share in the chat the link to that methodology. And she's also asked me to flag that throughout the whole monitoring framework, so there is this specific target that we're interested in monitoring, but we're quite interested in how we monitor this across the whole of the GBF and the gender biodiversity gaps in enhancing national monitoring systems and how to make sure that national monitoring systems are gender responsive. So to that end, I think Kathy's work is going to be focusing around helping countries with developing national monitoring plans that are gender responsive, but also working with countries as a whole on Section C of the Global Biodiversity Framework, and that outcome 3 of the Gender Plan of Action. She's listed some specific indicators that she wanted to flag that I can, perhaps when we get further into the discussions, I can talk a little bit further about, but she was just wanting to make sure that everybody is aware of this work, and we're happy to have further discussions around this for anyone that's interested. Thanks so much.
Thanks to you. Online questions, please, Pam.
Hello. Hi, I'm Shruti. I'm from Women for Biodiversity, and I'm also part of the Women Caucus team. I have 2 questions for the panelists. But before that, I think it's a little time to congratulate all the work of everyone who's been involved, because the Substa document on monitoring framework finally has the Gender Plan of Action as one of the key indicators in their final document. So I think that's great, and I hope that it continues to be there. With that, I wanted to ask 2 questions. One is, will the implementation of the Gender Plan of Action be a mandate for the gender focal points of each of these countries? And the second is, how can civil society organizations, especially those who are working on gender issues, be engaged and we ensure their full and effective participation at national level, including with the reviewing and implementation of the NBSAP? So how do we ensure that GPA is part of this, and how do we ensure CSOs are part of this at a national level?
Would you like to answer?
I'll take a little bit of your important question, Shruti. So about civil society organizations, since I represent one of them at least, I think it's very important. We need to be constantly reminded that the whole of society call is strongly embedded in the GBF as approved. And it's also up to us to make it work. And I think civil society organizations have a important role to play in facilitating this discussion at national level, the inclusion, the engagement, and making sure that women networks, association, and organization have a place at the table, at the implementation on the ground, not only at the table where decisions are made, but also on the ground in their implementation. So this supportive role for the self-strengthening of women's groups, I think, is a call the civil societies at national level and subnational level need to take on. And that could be an important contribution to the implementation of the gender plan of action, but especially of a gender responsive global biodiversity framework.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. I think I'll also build on the response that Christina has given on the civil society question. I just also wanted to mention that UN Women convenes what is called the Generation Equality Action Coalition for Feminist Action for Climate Justice, which has a large focus on the Biodiversity Convention, among other multilateral environmental agreements. And here, the Action Coalition is a multi-stakeholder partnership that is rolled out globally, is very active in all regions of the world, and brings together in partnership academia, governments, private sector, but also civil society. And the presence of civil society is really significant in this process. And it actually is like a movement that grew out of the principle that development has to be a civil society driven process. So this is in its wiring, if I may say, that civil society takes a very central role in the operation of the generation equality process. So I would encourage you to join this action coalition. We're only there as conveners. It is a process that belongs to the partners and is actually working to demonstrate a lot of action that is happening on the ground in terms of how the civil society is making a contribution to environmental action on the ground. And I tend to think that this is in some way connected to your first question, Shruti, which is, should the implementation of the GPA be a mandate of national focal points? It's through actions like these that planning for the biodiversity implementation plan itself on the ground, it needs to have consultation with all different partners that bring up the demands for the NBSAP focal points to take on the implementation of the GPA as one of the core mandates on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Olivier, please.
Yeah, just perhaps, responding to Natasha also to comment. Thank you for being here on behalf of Catherine. As WCMC is a key partner for the implementation of the Gender Plan of Action. And I think you're absolutely right in stating that I think from what I understood, what you really wanted to highlight was this issue of the cross-cutting and the mainstreaming of gender, which is relevant to if not all targets, but relevant to many, if not all areas of work of the CBD and the processes. SABSTA here last week was an example of that, is with regards in particular to the discussion on the monitoring framework. So thank you for reminding us of that, and maybe to think about the implementation of gender plan of action in view of not just the gender plan of action, because it, as we will see, we'll go through the outcomes, but it's detailed, but also invites parties and organizations to really implement the gender plan of action in synergies, not only with CBD processes, but with other multilateral environmental agreements, which means that we have to look beyond just the CBD processes, but also look at other aspects of other environmental agreements, multilateral environmental agreements. I just also wanted to respond to the online question as regards to how do we involve civil society and others in the implementation of the gender plan of action, and the question was specifically on the mainstreaming of the gender consideration into NBSAPs. 2 points here. One is that, of course, the intent in creating the gender national focal points is to have a relay mechanism between the other focal points of the CBD. Here, I'm not just talking about the CBD focal points, but I'm talking about all the focal points, national focal points, to have a technical relay between this person who is the gender focal point. That means that someone that a country has appointed, we have about 36 now, if I'm not mistaken. Terry, that's right? Yeah, she's nodding. 36 gender focal points, which are meant to be the technical relay to the other focal points with regards to the implementation of the gender plan of action. That means that could facilitate the involvement of the countries in terms of really having the technical expertise to sort of implement a gender plan of action. But what this calls for is for us to reflect on how we can further capacitate these gender national focal points, because this is something that the gender plan of action is requiring us to do as a mandate, and requiring us, the Secretariat, to do, but with other organizations. I just want to come back to, on the last point, just when you look at the gender plan of action, and if you read the basically in detail the modalities, you will notice that it's carefully balanced division of labor in terms of implementation. From the onset, it's mentioned that it's not only parties that have to implement the gender plan of action, but others also, including civil society organizations. It's specifically mentioned, and the reason why it's mentioned, for those of you who were in the negotiation of the gender plan of action, there was a clear recognition that parties have to really collaborate with others to implement the gender plan of action, and even parties were stating that they need the expertise, the know-how of other organizations. So that's why you have it stated clear in the decision of the adopting the gender plan of action. So I think there are many opportunities there. I'd just like to highlight that we have in the CBD, we are having dialogues on NBSAPs, and what we've tried to do with partners is to have representative representative in these dialogues to advance these issues. So I think there's many opportunities. Of course, this is a call from us to please, if you haven't done so yet in your countries, to nominate or designate gender national focal points, which is, I think, an important step to take. And then to ensure, when you look at the list of the gender national focal points, I'm also pleased to see that there's some kind of a balance, gender balance, in the people who have been nominated, which is also good, because that's proof of principle, I think. So thanks.
Thank you, Olivier. Well, we have to move on, but the questions that are pending, we can attend to those afterwards, after the break. But before closing this first panel or this first space of interactive discussion, I would like to give the word to Amelia, that she has to share with us some instruction. Thank you very much for being here, and stay here, please, after.
Thank you so much, Eva, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Just to share a bit about the structure of today's session, Like the idea is not to be sitting here all day. Obviously, like we started with the panel, but the idea also is to have this session more as a workshop or more interactive, right? So as soon as I finish speaking, we go out to the first coffee break. And perhaps while you are in the coffee break, start reflecting about the 3 outcomes of the gender plan of action and the indicative objectives and the actions, because the idea is that we finish today with a full collaborative roadmap. Now, here we have the setup, but we need to provide the input to it, right? So we have these post-its that we can use all along during the day. And the idea is that we can share what is going to happen in our countries within our organizations, which kind of activities are we planning to organize, or we think that we could do, like maybe like by reflecting with the rest of the colleagues, we come with new ideas. But the objective is that we can see how all of us, we are contributing to the GPA implementation, or how we are going to, or we could contribute to the implementation. That is during the coffee breaks, or whenever you have an idea, you can come and post it. As soon as we come back from the coffee break, we're gonna spend 1 hour in a World Cafe exercise. We're gonna split ourselves according to the language that we are more comfortable speaking with. So we have the English station over there in the back, to the right. Then we have the French station in the other corner, and we're gonna have the Spanish station over here. We're gonna spend around 1 hour discussing these guiding questions that the panel also addressed, right? How are we going to implement the objectives within the plan of action? So that's why we are inviting people to download the gender plan of action, because we are gonna go through the document, right? It is a plan that has been developed, and actually I would like to acknowledge the presence of Tanya, because she has spent a lot of years supporting the development of that plan that has yes, let's clap, please. Because it's a really rich document that is provides a clear roadmap to all of us, no? Like it has objectives, indicative actions, potential deliverables, and as mentioned by the panel, it also indicates who is responsible or potential responsible. So during the World Cafe, we're going to discuss more in detail that document, so please make sure to download it while you are in the break. And then we are gonna come back to this plenary to share what we discussed. And you see, it's pretty much we're expecting to be interactive and rapid setup, so you don't just sit here and listen, but it's it's a dialogue. So let's go to the first coffee break. We all need it, and in 15 minutes we come back for the World Cafe. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Stay connected. Thank you very much. We are back. Thank you very much also for those in line. And now I will let us go straight to the matter of things. I will invite the rapporteurs of the World Cafe. Please, you have 5 minutes to present the results of your groups. Starting with Pamela, please.
De acuerdo. Tuve el placer de estar guiando el grupo para las personas que hablamos español, españolenses. Lo identificamos
Pame,
algunos.
espera. she's going to speak in Spanish. So if people can wear your headsets. Is the other slide?
Yeah, don't worry, I can do it in English. So to facilitate the communication here in the room. So we will focus on outcome one. That was to enable the participation and the process on the three objectives of the convention. So we discovered gaps about here and possible indication solutions. So we were talking about the capacities, share the capacities, and to create different kind of workshops, and the way that we need to share the knowledge between our partners, for example, our colleagues, that we usually focus our attention on to give knowledge instead of to share knowledge and to build knowledge with the communities, for example, with women, and also that we need to create capacities also in, for example, for the financial part and for the soft skills. So we will jump into the second outcome, and this was focused on the politics. So what do we need to do to achieve the right politics to this outcome? So we identify we have the support for some participants here that belongs to a party, and they were really supporting about the fact to have a gender focus point. So we are celebrating that. We also need to do some changes in the legislation, for example, to prevent the discrimination of the women, and the inclusion of them as a right the line tenures, right? And in the third outcome, well, it will be a big one, because it's what actions are needed to be enabled to enable women to participate. So again, capacity building to build the networks. It was something important starting now. So most of their outcomes virtually starts right now. We also talk about the modification that maybe we can ask GEF to do, so women can get access to the funds in a easiest way, and also to have the capacitation to access to them. So I think that will be the outcomes for this.
Thank you very much, Pamela. Next.
Good day, everyone. My name is Sharon. We were on the far end. We had our discussions in English. I will go straight into the questions that we answered in the two outcomes. So the first question is, what actions and steps can be taken to implement the specific outcomes in the GPA? First, our first action is to ensure that there is equal and meaningful participation of women and girls in the processes of the CBD. Number two is to ensure that there is integration of data across all the different components of the framework. Number three is we discussed that there is a need to help countries ensure that their production of data cuts across all the synergies, that the production of data is correlated so that there are no gaps in the process. The second one is, can we share some of the challenges that are experienced in the process of advancing and implementing the GPA? Some of the challenges that we discussed are the frequency of the collection and reporting of data is not documented, such that you will find some data collection period is runs up to a period of 10 years. And in a span of 10 years, there are different factors that may influence the change of data. So there's a need to ensure that the frequency is highlighted and the data is compared so that a story is given. It does not, for instance, an example was given where you will find data is only collected for girls and women. And so the other gender of the male species is left out. And so there is disparity in comparing this data. The other challenge is that in creating partnerships, partners need to come together in collection of this data so that there is no disconnect, so that people are able to, if countries, for instance, are collecting data, it is under a same methodology. The third discussion point was on how to ensure that national plans, including the NBSAPs, are designed and implemented in gender-responsive manners. Number one is to provide the meaningful and the equal and meaningful participation, such that women and girls are also part of this participation while developing these frameworks. Number two is increase the capacity to contribute, increase the capacity of both girls and women in contributing to this development processes. The other one is advocate for case systems that do not constrain women and girls' time. For instance, and another example was given, the care systems, where such factors are not considered while we are taking into account the participation of women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you very much. Next. That's, huh? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I already want to multiplicate the people here in the room. So we need to do that. Thank you very much. Now I open the floor for some comments. Please mind the time. We have very little time to express our future plans. No one? Online? No? Okay, perfect. Well. Yes. Yes, that I meant that. Is anybody else want to share something else to strengthen these positions, these propositions? Okay, so we move forward. I thank you. For me, it has been an honor accompanying this dialogue. I am Eda Fernandez from Avas, and I am a proud member of this CBD Women's Caucus. Thank you very much. Let us push forward what the Kunming-Montreal GBF mandates. Let us ensure the full, equitable, inclusive, effective, and gender-responsive representation and participation in decision-making and in all that this entails. Thank you very much. Okay, now, the CBD Women's Caucus has the full support of the CBD Secretariat, including in making this dialogue happen and in how the Women Caucus is going to continue to grow stronger in numbers and focus ambition. I give the floor to Olivia or Thank you, Olivia.
Thank you. So I definitely agree with everything, and it is absolutely true that the Secretariat stands ready to support the Women's Caucus to do this important work, because it is part of our mandate to implement the Gender Plan of Action and the framework as is. In these efforts to sort of advance the work on gender and biodiversity, I spoke a little bit earlier about the nomination of gender biodiversity focal points. And I just wanted to perhaps just summarize a little bit about what we've been, sort of the experience has been so far with regards to gender focal points. We got a lot of questions when the notification was sort of put out to nominate the gender focal points. The first thing first, and Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong here, Teresa is the one who actually is the one managing the whole sort of, so we make sure things are well done and in order, but there's no deadline for nominating the gender focal points. We got a lot of questions in that regard. The notification, of course, was time-bound, but it's still open. You can still nominate as countries gender focal plans. So I'm looking at countries here, Guinea-Bissau, not to put you on the spot, others. Please, if you can, ensure that you have a designated agenda focal point that can follow up on issues related to implementation at the national level, but also liaise with the Secretariat. We would be happy to help you. If you have questions, please let us know. Write to me, copying Teresa, and then we'll be happy to sort of so help you in that process. The second point, Amelia, if you allow me, I think what we have actually sort of learned from the newly nominated, a few of them, gender focal points, is the challenges that they have in terms of, yes, they may be nominated at gender focal points. They may have a level of expertise. Some are nominated with without the required expertise, but are nominated to be capacitated to do the work. So I think we need to collectively think, and here the Women's Caucus needs to help us on this, is how best to ensure that they have the sufficient knowledge to engage in the work of the CBD. The other challenge that they're pointing out, those who are usually nominated as gender focal points, they are also already engaged in other multilateral environmental agreements, so their portfolios are quite large. So we need to find a way also to sort of make sure that we engage them in a way that doesn't overwhelm them in terms of their engagement. With Amelia and the Women's Caucus, we've also been participating in events that span multiple conventions, including the Rio conventions. And I think that would be a good opening for gender focal points to participate, for us to mobilize resources for them to participate in these various fora so that they can also draw the synergies between the different conventions. I think that's quite key. I just wanted to mention also, every opportunity that we've had at the Secretariat to invite more, let's say, our gender constituency, increase the representation of the gender constituency. I'll call it at that because that's really what it is. Any extra funding, we're always available to sort of, provide that support. So I want to stop here not to take all the time. And just before I conclude, though, I was surprised by the working group when the reports were done that other members of the groups did not intervene. I didn't gather that you were all agreeing on everything, having listened a little bit. So I was expecting a bit of debate actually in the groups because my impression was that you were kind of arguing and debating on certain points. Or I mean, I don't doubt the good job of the reporters, but I think there were some discussions there. So I don't know, just maybe solicit you to voice.
Thank you, Olivia. Exactly, exactly. We need to be clear on what we are going to be working on, and there is no more clarity than the one that comes from discussion and debating. We are very good in doing that. I know, I'm for sure. So I will be something that it is important is, are we speaking in the same language? Everybody are understanding the same things? This is one of the debates, well, kind of debates that were surfacing in our group, because we have to change what we have been saying. We have to shake it up and put in new ingredients there. Discussions on finance is very important for all of us, but what are we going to say about that? How can we say it? In which language should we speak to the financial systems or the financial institutions? What capacity building on knowledge sharing are we talking about? Do we have all the information, or do we need to share the information we have? So I open again the floor for interventions, because I'm sure you have much more to say. Please, darling, and then Christina. Thank you. Darling, I say darling all the time, so please. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and thanks, Oliver, for kind of prompting some of the getting out what the real discussion points. So I think I do want to highlight one thing that we were discussing, and that I think is a very simple, I mean, it's not simple, but it's a very practical follow-up to this conversation would be, and we don't know if the Secretariat can do this role, so that was a little bit of the debate, but we do need to have some sort of, because 3.1, the outcome 3.1 talks about a baseline report and information, but we were saying, to collect baseline data at the global level is not useful, and definitely not the role of the Secretariat. But the baseline data should be collected at national level. Now, that isn't an immediate outcome because that needs resources and time, but something even then more, practical, and that can be done quite quickly, is a solicitation of all of these rich organizations that have, I mean, I just met our friend from the Forest Peoples, and they have a training manual for Indigenous peoples and locals communities on the Convention on Biological Diversity. I wasn't aware of that. So, having just one call for, this kind of data information dump of everything we have, and all it needs to be organized into access to land, or Indigenous peoples, or some simple kind of typology, thematic based, and so that we can have a quick assessment. What do we have? But then what do we need? So that was just one kind of discussion on really, is that something that the Secretariat could do in follow-up to this, because you have everyone's emails, and whoever responds, and not, but then it's just kind of pulling that together. And then the other thing, I think that Pamela, I'm sorry if I missed it, that you said this, but just to raise it again, there's increasing work on building synergies among the conventions. And like the work that's going to be happening again the second year in Berlin, that's bringing kind of the land rights conversation as the through line between all three conventions. But what we started kind of talking about is, in each of the conventions, there's a mechanism or a constituency, a women's and gender constituency, or however the formulation is, but also other bodies of kind of the UN system. For example, the civil society and Indigenous persons mechanism of the Committee on World Food Security, because we were talking about the need for more knowledge exchange and tactic sharing and strategies of learning how, engage effectively and ensure that the conversation moves beyond just participation of women. That's not enough. It's not enough to count how many, women gender focal points are there. So sorry, I'm taking a long time. Those are the two things that really kind of sparked, not a debate, but just kind of where can this work be situated? Who can take this up? And those seem to be kind of fairly, easy low-hanging fruit for next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christina. And then I will invite the parties that are here to share with us some reflections. Yes, thank you. So, excuse me. Christina, you wanted to take the floor?
Very short, so don't worry. I just wanted to reflect briefly on the discussion that we had, which was not, I think, having one voice, but it was a very useful, explorative discussion and building on each other perspective. So it was interesting. It was like a layer cake, but we were building it because different experiences, different perspectives, and but I think the key point is, one, how to continue this, but the other one, how our own responsibility, each one of us, in our roles and different roles and capacity to bring this back at national level, because this is really key in the context of the implementation. Thank you.
The parties that are here, I invite you to make comment, please. So sorry, I was looking down the room. If you can present yourself, is the other button. Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Emlyn Wright Hansen from the Ministry of Environment in Ghana. So I was part of the English speaking group. For me, we have designated gender focal points. And like she mentioned, there's a need for synergy for all the biodiversity related conventions. It's time for us to make sure that just as we are building synergy and cooperation among all the biodiversity related conventions, for the gender aspect, we need to work together, because one way or the other, the activities of one convention affects the other. So if we want the Women's Caucus or the women's group to be a formidable group that we can count on, and we are sure that we'll champion the cause of the gender plan of action and push our ideas forward, we need to work together. We need to also ensure that there's capacity to be able to deliver. It's not just about nominating one to be a focal point or getting more women to be part of the negotiations. We have quite a number of women here. If you look around, you'll be impressed by the numbers. And we have said in our group that it's not just about being present. That's not what we are looking for. We are looking for impact. So if we want the women to be at the negotiation table, what are we as a women's caucus going to do to ensure that the women who come to the CBD process are able and equipped to be able to engage in the negotiations and to be able to make an impact, where at any point in time we can feel their presence and say that not just because there was a woman who led that country's delegation or that observer group's delegation, but they were there and we felt their presence. I think that is what we need to do. Can we think of supporting more women, either those who are already in the process or getting more women to even observe and learn? Because sometimes, if I use my personal experience, I was plunged into this process with no guidance. So I didn't know what CRP meant. I didn't know what L document meant. I was just lost. It's taken me some time to get here, but if there was some guidance, if there was somebody, a mentor, let's say, guiding me through the process, then I would know that if I take this document and I find decisions so and so, this is where I'll find it. That was missing for me. And I see a number of young ladies around like that. So when we gather, those of us who have at least had one or two experiences can say that, okay, so when we come for these meetings and the documents have been put out, you have to read them not just reading that individual document. You need to go and link it to the convention text and check what the articles are saying and find the correlation. Otherwise, we are here, yes, the women are here, but they are at sea, completely lost. So we need to build that capacity as well. I mentioned in our group the example of the HAC, High Ambition Coalition for Nature and People. And I think that what they are doing is something that we can learn from. They are providing tools and guidance. They are engaging the people who have been nominated to work with them on Target 3. Can we as a women's group start doing something like that? Before the CBD meetings, can we engage the women? Let them know if the parties haven't been able to go through the documents. Maybe we have some resource persons or some people providing technical backstopping. So they have gone through the documents and they have highlighted the key issues. Can you run it by your primary national focal point, or if it relates to ABS or it relates to the Cartagena Protocol, can you run it by them? Is this a position that your country can support? If they can support, then let's identify which countries we can already say, can you be the one? And in fact, for HAC, they actually gave us proposed text. They didn't just give us the points, they gave us proposed text that we could read. And then in our meeting prior to SAFSA, they had identified who can. So there was a virtual call. So those of us who were online, then we had volunteers pick up which agenda items they were going to take. And it was tabled. So whether it was going to be coming from Party A or Party B, what was important was that the issues that had been identified in the documents had been made available to parties. Parties bought into it and they tabled it. Also in our group, the issue of the women's group being an observer group. So until parties have spoken, the observer groups cannot speak. So the observer groups speak, they make proposals, and they'll need the parties because this is a party-led process. If we're able to engage the parties well, by the time the women's group are proposing anything, they have massive support. Because this time I listened at one of the sessions, I was waiting. When the women's group, there were 2 parties. So I said, if there had been effective engagement, can you imagine the number of parties who would have raised their hands to support it? So I think that we need to do some more engagements. Thank you.
Thanks to you. Thanks to you. Our friend here from. Thank you. Thank you, Sudan.
Yes, nice to meet you all. My name is Abel from Sudan, from Higher Council for Environment and Natural Resources. We have to mainstreaming the things of gender linked to biodiversity, firstly, in all levels, decision maker and lowest levels, if I can say, and building capacity for who will work on these activities. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. On the contrary. Well, now we have some.
May I?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Let me introduce myself. I am Saida Masuma Khanum. I'm from Bangladesh. I'm working, currently I'm working as a joint secretary to the government. So currently I am working on deputation in the Department of Environment under Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. So I was looking for this conference room 10 because it's my first day in Nairobi and first day here, very first time. So I was so lucky to find this room, and Marianjo from Forest People, he suggested me that just go inside and get yourself introduced, and he told me to get introduced with Amelia. Amelia from Mexico. Yeah, so I'll be in touch. And I was asking my assistant director, is there any gender focal point from Bangladesh in GBF? Because we are also having EAS, Early Action Support, for formulating NBSAP. And I very recently, for the last 2 months, I've got the responsibility to look after NBSAP. And also, since last year, I am the member secretary, ex officio, of Biosafety Core Committee. So, and also I'll take the opportunity to share another thing with you. From 2011 to 2013, I had a chance to do a graduation, what we call masters. Another masters in environmental sciences, and it was a first-hand research-based thesis on the traditional and in knowledge of female farmers of Bangladeshi women, rural women farmers of Bangladesh, to make them empowered for environmental conservation, focusing on their traditional knowledge. And to be very unofficial, I have to regret that it was not appreciated in my country, but I was appreciated in the University of Tsukuba, where I had the masters under the scholarship of Japan government, a government scholarship. So I was very much appreciated there, and also had some kind of rewards also there. So it is a very good thing. After 12 years, I am in Nairobi because I visited Nairobi in 2012 as a student from Tsukuba University. So it's a kind of, after 12 years, I feel so lucky to be here, and it's a kind of very fortunate coincidence. In the monitor, I just left the conference room 1 and came here to join here, and I want to take part in the side events and so on, the Women Caucus thing. So I'll be finishing for now that my assistant director just told me that we do have a gender focal point in the ministry, like common thing, because Bangladesh government has gender focused budget. And in every ministry, in their main budget, before submitting their main budget to the Ministry of Finance, they have to show that we have budget for gender friendly things. So we do have that. So after going back, as we are working for formulating NBSAP, it's under GBF commitment. So I'll be trying because I'll be trying. So again, hello everyone, and I want to remain connected with you and have the schedule for the 2 weeks. And I'm the only one from Bangladesh for the whole SBI thing. But anyway, I missed the chance to attend your side events and this thing. Thank you. Thank you.
On the contrary, thank you.
Yeah.
And you are very, very welcome to the Women Caucus. And please, we can support you if you are alone. Look for us because we can support ourselves. Between ourselves, there's support also for that. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. On the contrary. Well, now we are starting our closing, and please.
Sí, presioné el otro, sorry. Well, we have just few minutes, and time is never enough. And we were a bit hesitant when planning this, like, should we do the whole day? Should we do 2 days? Should we do half day? Like, what is going to be the best setup? But we decided to see this as a first step of a long conversation that, well, yeah, is needed to happen. I would like just to say thanks so much for being here. I think that if you look around, we are the gender champions. We all are. And well, perhaps a quick clarification that is actually a good space to make that clarification in terms of the nature of the CBD Women's Caucus, and also the invitation that we are trying to make in this space about the gender and biodiversity focal points. The CBD Women's Caucus is this civil society space where women from different organizations or from different groups can come and advocate for their rights and come together and exchange knowledge and information, right? So everyone within the space could be member of the caucus, but parties or UN agencies are considered as allies. And that's why we are also inviting within the Secretariat for the parties to come together in a party-led space where you can exchange knowledge and support, because we know that in the process of the negotiations and so on, like sometimes we need our own spaces, right, to share different positions and so on, but that doesn't prevent us, all of us, that we are here to be allies, close allies in the advancement of gender justice within the CBD. And just perhaps a couple of comments from my side in terms of some of the key messages I would like just to highlight. There are many. I would like to highlight the whole GPA and all the objectives, because to me it's like we need to achieve it. But I will just build in one thing that Olivier said at the beginning, and it's like how we all take the ownership or the task of advocating for the GPA. Like, as mentioned, the GPA has already been developed, and it took many years to have that kind of document that gives us a clear guideline with clear timelines, with clear activities. Now we need to take it and put it in all the spaces that we can put it forward, all the decisions, all the activities, all the workshops, all the events, because we need people to know it. Like, I don't know if before today you had the opportunity to read it, if you had the opportunity to go through it. I hope you have done, but maybe a couple of colleagues, it was the first time. So let's try to do some exercise like that with more of our colleagues. Like, they have to be aware what is in that document, so we all can implement it. And close to the implementation, and we have heard this, but it's something that we need to make to happen, and is the term of having adequate and predictable resources. And I will need to make the request to have adequate and predictable resources for the CBD Women's Caucus participation, because this year we have had the opportunity to know that resources were going to come for women to participate in the spaces. So we were able to create these kind of spaces because we knew that, okay, we are going to attend that meeting, then let's plan for that meeting. But if we don't know if we're going to get the funds, if we're going to be there, if our colleagues are going to be able to come and support, then we cannot push the agenda, right? So we need to know that we are going to be able to deliver also. Yeah, that I will highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. I mean, I don't have much to say or to add. I think this was really fruitful. I just want to respond to the question that you posed. What is possible within the Secretariat under the authority of Teresa here? What is it that we can do? Of course, I think we can, to the best of our abilities, be the anchor in terms of disseminating information. But I have to note also that given the resources, human resources, that we are a bit constrained, and that's also why we work with partners. But of course, to the best of our abilities, information such as what you're looking at in terms of engaging with the process or networking, we can facilitate that, including telling you what CRPs and L documents are and what the processes are. Please feel free to engage with us so that we can actually sort of help you before the meetings or in the lead up to the meetings. And maybe that's a point for you, Amelia, when we plan for the next iteration of this, to maybe dedicate a session that's more practical in the sense of like engagement with CBD processes. We can definitely have an input on that. There's another point that I'd like to make. When we discussed with Amelia, when we're planning this event, we came up with a realization, I would say, that sometimes there's a confusion about what is the relationship between the Gender Plan of Action and the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Because of course, the sequence of it is that the Gender Plan of Action was adopted at COP, which also adopted the framework, right? But if you look at the framework and you look at the Gender Plan of Action side by side, first of all, the GPA, all sections of the GPA mention the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework, as it was called at the time. So the cross-reference is evident. So in terms of an anchor, or if you will, a way to mobilize the support needed in the countries, presenting just the GPA as a standalone action plan of the CBD doesn't do very much, but presenting it as a plan of action that actually is completely embedded in the implementation of the framework provide an entry point. Because I'm saying this for two reasons. What you'll be asked to do is to report on the implementation of the framework. You will not be necessarily asked to report squarely on the implementation of the GPA. So when you do your reporting, when you give us information, the templates that we have, for example, for reporting now are reporting against the Global Biodiversity Framework. So you need to think about that. And we need, as Secretariat, to give you guidance as to how you can report in the best manner, that you just don't report on the specific outcomes that you've actually worked on, because these outcomes, if you look at them in detail, they actually speak to specific sections and targets of the biodiversity framework. Mauricio, who's not here, but who was here, he mentioned, and he's right, section C of the framework, for example, which is all considerations, speak directly to the GPA in such a way that you will need to sort of report on that section. And there's work that was started in with the workshop we did in WCMC, hosted and by Natasha and colleagues, where we spend a lot of time in the Cambridge workshop to define, because we have section C that doesn't speak to a specific target. And the question was, how do we ensure that section C is included in the monitoring framework? And in that discussion, gender was a central part of it. The issue of Indigenous people and local communities, traditional knowledge, all the issues that we spoke here came to light. So I think it's important that sort of you think about the gender plan of action within the prism of the framework, and that you actually sort of engage in its implementation within that prospect. So those are the points that I wanted to say. And as usual, David is very timely. So please, David, join us. To close this event. So I'd like to introduce David. So David Cooper is our acting executive secretary of the CBD, and we're very pleased to have you, David, here to close this event. It has been a very rich dialogue, and we give you the floor for your closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, and thanks for the opportunity to come. Sorry I couldn't be listening and participating earlier. We've got, as you know, discussions on DSI going on. But I wanted to thank the Women's Caucus for taking initiative to organize this. We're very happy to join. Want to thank my colleague Terry for the work done in supporting this as well. I mean, dialogues like this, discussions like this are really important. We have the Global Biodiversity Framework, the Biodiversity Plan. We have the Gender Plan of Action, but they're pieces of paper. So how do we make them actually useful? I think probably there's quite a lot to do to demonstrate to parties and to all the other actors how we can help implement the Global Plan of Action, and in particular targets 22 and 23 by making use of the Global Plan of Action on gender, right? And making these connections is important. I mean, we also note that you work and have worked in helping to develop the Global Biodiversity Framework itself, but also since you've worked closely with other communities from civil society, including Indigenous peoples and local communities and youth, and this intersectionality is also, we know, really important. We're happy to also have you participate in the dialogue that took place in Geneva ahead of the working group on Article 8J. I hear that you'd like to have something similar, perhaps, or something perhaps more focused on gender, but something a bit more inclusive ahead of COP. So we can compare notes and think how best to do that. I am very excited about Cali, Colombia, for various reasons. I've been in Colombia actually 3 times this year, and I see the enthusiasm there from the government, from not only the Ministry of Environment, but from the Vice President, from other ministries as well, and a real sort of excitement also in civil society from Indigenous peoples, Afro-descendant communities, campesino communities, and others. I think given also, the orientation that we see in many, particularly many countries in South America, including Colombia, where we had strong leadership, I think, in the discussions to highlight the importance of gender approaches. We've got a big opportunity in COP16 to really make the gender aspects of the GBF real, to make it really gender responsive, to make full use of the gender plan of action. And I'm sure that we can, well, not so much we can count on you, I'm sure that you will want to, and you will lead efforts in that regard, in mobilizing people and explaining why these things are important, in demonstrating why they're important. So thanks so much for organizing this. Of course, you can count on us as strong partners for your mission. Thank you.
This was not planned. It was supposed to be Amelia to do this, but thank you, David. And so with this, we close this dialogue. Just to say that, of course, we're here, Amelia and I, during the week, as there's been also discussion, David, about the engagement during this particular meeting. Issues of resource mobilization, for example, have been highlighted. So we're here, colleagues of the Secretariat are here. Please get in touch with myself or Terry from the Secretariat, and of course, Amelia, and then we're happy to help you going forward. And have a good week and good luck with SBI.
Thank you so much.